Hello, everyone. Welcome to Canadian Yorker. Excuse me. Welcome to everyone to Canadian Yorker um, live on YouTube for today. This is our next to last live stream for the month of August, and we are in the month of August already. It's gonna be August is gonna be over pretty soon since it's August 29th. There's only 3 more days left until August is over, and then September is right around the corner. Excuse me for my voice. I gotta clear this up. Excuse me. So, we're here today, and I'm bringing you guys with. I'm throwing a curveball, and we're not talking about sports today. Instead, on this video, we are gonna be going over some of the current events that are happening out here in the United States. And so this is sort of I'm not gonna say, but I'll just mention this. This is sort of a concerning outcome that I'm kind of paying attention to, and it's kind of interesting to learn about. So apparently, it's been noted that the birth rate in the United States is actually going down, and that's a problem. We got a big problem on our hands in the United States. It's not only affecting the United States, but it's affecting many other countries around the world. And so, in this video, in this live stream, we're going to be going over some of the things that some researchers are saying online about what is going on for today. So, if don't be afraid to like, share, and subscribe, and make sure you show those like buttons on this video, and let's get started. So for today, we're talking from usafacts.org, and I'm going into this article is written October 25th, 2024, last year, where it's talking about how has the U.S. fertility and birth rates changed over time. And in this article, it's talking about women in the U.S. are having fewer children and starting families later in life. So this is just kind of I'm going to say it's a general live stream topic discussion for today. So we're going to be going into some of the reasons why the birth rates are declining. So let's read this article here for today. Of course, as always, I've included the links in the description box for everyone to read these articles, and also we're going to be watching a video on why this is happening. So it says here, women nationwide are giving birth to fewer children than they did 100 years ago, 10 years ago, and even a year ago. Those who are increasingly having children later in life, measuring a nation's fertility and birth rates explains how demographics may shift over time. However, fertility rates calculated, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, defines the general fertility rate as the number of live births per woman ages 15 to 44. The question is asked, how has the fertility rate changed over time? The nation's fertility rate has declined since 1957, when there were 122.9 births per woman ages 15 to 44. Data for 2023 puts the current fertility rate at less than half the 1957 rate, 54.5. So that's a big decline from 122.9 births to 54.5 births in 2023. So according to the statistics here, the U.S. fertility rate reached an all-time low in 2023 at 54.6. Says, how have birth rates changed by maternal age? Many American women are having children later in life. In 2005, the birth rate was highest for women ages 25 to 29, 116.5 births per woman. In 2023, the women ages 30 to 34 took the lead at 95.1 births. From 2005 to 2023, birth rates dropped for women ages 34 and younger and increased among those ages 35 and up. The birth rate decreased for women 34 and younger and increased for women 34, 35 and older. So you can tell by the numbers here. In dark green, that's 2025, and in light green, that is 2023. So ages 30 to 34 is 94.5 for ages women 35 and older. For dark green, that's for the women who are that's 116.5. Okay. How do fertility rates vary by state? In 2022, fertility rates were highest in South Dakota, 65.5 births for women, Alaska 64.9, Nebraska 63.3. Fertility rates were lowest in Oregon, 47.3, Delaware 44.9, Vermont 44.3. Alaska and, oh boy, I hate that when it happens. Alaska, South Dakota, Alaska, and Nebraska had the highest fertility rates in 2022. So, according to that, Alaska had 64.9, South Dakota 66.5, Nebraska 63.3, and since I live in New York, it's 53.6. So in 2022, New York had 53.6 births. So wow, Vermont had 44.3 births. That is quite low. So continuing. How have fertility rates changed by state over time? Fertility rates dropped in all states between 2005 and 2022. The states with the biggest drops were Utah, negative 33.9%, Arizona, and that's 31.9%, and Delaware, 31.2%. In Utah, the 2005 fertility rate was 92.8 births per woman, and 1,000 in 2022 it was dropped to 63.1. The states with the most stable fertility rates were Kentucky, negative 6%, North Dakota, 4.3%, Louisiana, 0.3%, and Louisiana, for the fertility rate dropped from 62 births to 61.8 births. Okay, so quite interesting that we see the change over time between 2005 and 2022. So that's the article there for everyone to read about the changing times. So kind of interesting to learn about that, that the birth rates have dropped and increased. It depends on where you live, really. So now we're gonna watch this short video here. It's not long, only 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It talks a little bit more about the sharp decline in the U.S. birth rate. So without further ado, let's get into it.
New data released by the CDC shows the number of children women are having has decreased for a second year in a row. The record level decline last year is leading to fears there may not be enough children to sustain the next generation. For more, we are joined by CBS Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Jon LaPook, who's been analyzing the numbers. So, Dr. LaPook, why is this an issue we should be worried about?
Well, I've been looking at the big numbers and the big pattern, right? If you go back to 2000, there were 4 million births and about 2.4 million deaths. And that led to 1.6 million more people on Earth than before that, right? You go forward to 2023, the number of births has dropped from 4 million to 3.6 million. I mean, that's a huge drop. And the deaths were 3.1 million. And so now you only have an excess of 500,000 new people, okay? Over time, we talk about the sandwich generation, right? The people in the middle, and then there are the people that they've taken care of, their parents, and then the kids are underneath them. That's got to be balanced. And it's getting lopsided. The fear is that as these numbers go down, you're simply not going to have enough people entering the economy to sustain it.
And John, do we know why this is happening, or is there some thoughts about why these numbers are declining?
Yeah, there are a lot of thoughts. First of all, the most obvious is that women are delaying pregnancy. We know that's been a pattern for decades and decades. So they're having babies later. Teenagers, interestingly enough, the birth rate there has dropped. So that's from contraception and education. And then you have sort of the question mark. So a lot of people are talking about the generation now saying, you know what, I just don't want to have children. There's such uncertainty about the future. I've actually had that in my own practice. People talking to me about this, whereas I didn't have that 10 years ago.
And so, let me, John, just to get, is it that the U.S. population it's not decreasing, it's just growing at a slower rate? Is that right?
It's such a good question, John, because this is the punchline here at the end of all these numbers, which can be confusing. From 2023 to 2024, the population of the United States increased by 3.3 million. But I just told you that there were only about 500,000 new births. What was the other 85% was from international migration. This got a time when we're cutting down on that, right? We're sending people out of the country. So that can affect the big picture.
All right, guys. So there we have it from the CBS News that it said that according to this, that in 2022 we had 3 million new births, and then but there was also a drop off as well. So, in all honesty, let's just say more younger people are choosing not to have children, and as people get older, people are deciding to have less kids. When they're younger, they want to put off having kids, and they're so deciding to have kids when they're older now. And I think partly it happens just because of sometimes it's for a variety of reasons, maybe for the economic situation. And I know I don't have time to put that into this live stream for today, but I just want to talk specifically about the birth rate, and how it's happening and why it's happening. So, in other words, going into the article from the CDC, this article was written on April 25th, 2024. So this was last year. So I should have. I'm also including this as something that in the very beginning of this live stream here. So it says here the general fertility rate in the United States decreased by 3% in 2022, reaching historic low. This marks the second consecutive year of decline, following a brief 1% increase from 2021 to 2022, and from 2014 to 2020, the rate consistently decreased by 2% annually. These statistics and other work were from provisional 2023 birth data were released by the CDC's National Center for Health Statistics. Other findings: the 2023 birth rates declined for women ages 29 to 39 years old, were unchanged for females 10 to 14 and 49 to 40. The birth rate for teenagers aged 15 to 19 was down 3% in 2023, with 13.2 births per 1,000 women, which is good. Good thing to hear that teenagers are deciding not to have kids at that age. That should not be happening. Teen pregnancy is a problem. The birth rate for women ages 24 to 24 reached a record low at 55.4. The cesarean delivery rate increased for the 4th year in a row to 32.4% in 2023. The low-risk cesarean delivery rate increased to 22.6%. The preterm birth rate was essentially unchanged at 10.4%. So, according to the CDC, last year, we see that the fertility rate was still decreasing at that time. So kind of going into more about that, the U.S. birth rate is falling fast. Why? It's complicated. As written in July last month, the total fertility rate is a small number with big consequences. It measures how many babies on average each woman will have over her lifetime. For a population to remain stable, flat, no growth, no decline, women on average have to have at least 2.1 kids. So, and women and men, let's face that, both you can't have a baby without a woman and a man together. In the U.S., that number is 1.6, and it's dropping. It's driving a new political debate about what, if anything, can be done about it. The thing is, beneath that demographic point are millions of families making intimate decisions about kids. NPR's Sarah McCammon and Brian Mann dug into the politics and personal stories behind America's shrinking birth rate. So, it says here, we already know about that, but we know right this year that the birth rate is at 1.6 now. That's not looking too good, because again, it's followed up in the same month in July. And this is on CBS News. The U.S. birth rate hits all-time low. CDC data shows here. According to the current year in this month, it says the fertility rate of the U.S. dropped to an all-time low in 2024, with fewer than 1.6 children being born per woman. Federal data released Thursday shows the U.S. was once among the few developed nations with a rate that ensured each generation had enough children to replace about 2.1 kids per woman, but it has been sliding in America for close to 2 decades as more women are waiting longer to have children or never taking that step at all. The new statistics is on par with fertility rates in Western European countries, according to World Bank data. So, alarmed by recent drops, the Trump administration has taken steps to increase further following birth rates, like issuing an executive order in February meant to expand access to and to reduce costs in vitro fertilization, and backing the idea of baby bonuses that might encourage more people to have kids. The White House Staff Secretary Will Scharf remarked to reporters at the time that in vitro treatments have become unaffordable for many Americans, or have been unaffordable for many Americans. Health insurance companies are required to cover IVF treatments, which can cost tens of thousands of dollars. And who can afford that, in all honesty? But there's no reason to be alarmed. According to Leslie Root, the University of Colorado Boulder researcher focused on fertility and population policy, we're seeing this as part of an ongoing process of fertility delay. We know that the U.S. population is still growing, and we want to have a natural increase, more births than deaths, she said. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released these statistics for the total fertility rate with updated birth data for 2024. In the early 1960s, the U.S. total fertility rate was around 3.5, but plummeted to 1.7 by 1976 after the baby boom ended. It gradually rose to 2.1 in 2007 before falling again, aside from the 2014 uptick. The rate in 2023 was 1.62. That's 1.6, but it edged down to in 2024 to 1.599, according to the CDC's National Center for Health Statistics. Birth rates are generally declining for women in most age groups, and that doesn't seem likely to change in the near future, said Karen Gazelle, the director of Carolina Population Center at the University of North Carolina. People are marrying later and are also worried about their ability to have the money, health insurance, and other resources needed to raise children in a stable environment. Worry is not a good moment to have kids, and that, she said, and that's why birth rates in most age groups are not improving. Asked about birth-promoting measures outlined by the Trump administration, Griswold said they don't tackle larger needs like parental leave and affordable health care. Things like that they are doing to really symbolic and are not likely towards things for real Americans. The CDC's new report, which is based on a more complete review of birth certificates than provisional data earlier this year, also showed a 1% increase in births, about 300 to 33,000 more last compared to the prior year. That brought the yearly total to just over 3.6 million babies born. But this is different. The provisional data indicated rate increases for women in the late 20s and 30s. However, the new report found birth rate data declines for women in the 20s and early 30s, and no change for women in the late 30s. What happened? CDC officials said it was due to recalculations stemming from a change in the U.S. Census population estimates used to compute the birth rate. That's plausible, Root said, as the total population of women of childbearing age grew due to immigration, it offset small increases in births to women in those age groups, she said. So, according to this article here, we have to have a normal birth rate of 2.1 births per woman and man in order to have a healthy, stable population. but the population growth has been going up and down since 2022. And on top of that, the government is really trying to get the insurance companies to cover in vitro fertilization, IVFs, for families, to have more kids, and also offer bonuses to people who have more kids as well, to help the population. So it's kind of interesting learning about this. But there's still the population. It's like we're stagnant right now, sticking to 1.6 births per 1,000 women. So it's still on this road of, we're doing okay for the most part. We're doing not too good, not too bad, but we're like all right on the line, and we're not doing too good. So what else can we say? But there's more here that I'm going to be covering here. It says the real rate behind the birth decline. It's from Newsweek.com. This article was written on August 2nd, 2025. It says here, countries all over the world, not just the United States, countries all over the world are facing declining birth rates, sparking a fear there will one day be more elderly people than working age people to support them. For example, in the U.S., the fertility rate, the average number of children a woman has in her lifetime, is now projected to average 1.6 births per woman over the next 3 decades, according to the Congressional Budget Office latest forecast released this year. That is below the replacement rate of 2.1 births per woman required to maintain a stable population without immigration. And as we know, I'm just going to mention, we have people who have traveled from so far to come to the United States to come and live here and work here in order to have a better life for themselves and for their families. And some have also been decided that some parts have decided that they do not want to have some people who have traveled here, so they decided to have them leave the country. And so in reality, what we have, we still are stuck with the problem of having 1.6 births per woman, and our replacement rate of having 2.1 births per woman is still at the same level. We are neither increasing or decreasing. In fact, it may look like we may be decreasing more. Another reason why we have issues with the declining birth rate is because financial struggles are often cited as the reason for people having fewer or no children, but recent research has focused on net cultural changes. Newsweek has pulled together the main reasons birth rates are declining to build a detailed picture of many issues governments are trying to tackle. So let's look at these issues. Financial worries. The 2008 financial crisis and its impact on housing, inflation, and pay has generally cited that major contributed to people's decisions to delay having children and to have fewer children or not have children at all. In June, the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, found that 39% of the 14,000 people across 14 countries it surveyed and said financial limitations prevented them from having the desired family size. Quote unquote, young families overwhelmingly report worries and uncertainty about their futures. Many expect to experience worse outcomes than their parents did. The report said their concerns about climate change and economic instability and rising global conflicts will be reflected in the choices they make about raising families, quote unquote. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has taken steps to try to tackle the concerns, including the White House exploring giving women a baby bonus of $5,000, according to an April report in the New York Times. The country could also make childbirth free for privately insured families with the bipartisan Supporting Healthy Moms and Babies Act, which would designate maternity care as an essential health benefit under the Affordable Care Act, which was introduced in the Senate in May. Family policies around child care and parental leave come up just as often as financial struggles, and two are often connected. Quote unquote by Poonam Maitreya, countries that have sustained or moderately increased birth rates like France and the Nordic nations have done so by investing in an affordable child care, paid maternity, paid parental leave, gender-equal workplaces, and housing support. So that's from the Executive Director of the Population Foundation of India, Poonam Maitreya. Poonam Maitreya also said, these create an enabling work environment where people feel secure in having children. She told Newsweek, fertility decisions are shaped by long-term confidence, not one-off cash handouts. Similarly, Theodore Cosco, a researcher fellow at the Oxford Institute of Population Aging, told Newsweek that addressing declining birth rates would require comprehensive support mechanisms such as affordable child care, said parental leave, healthcare access, and economic stability. Gender inequality. Another linked aspect this is gender inequality, a cause often stressed by Maitreya while speaking about the situation in India where fertility rate is 1.9, according to the World Bank data. She called gender inequality a critical challenge. She said that, quote unquote, no country has become economically advanced without a substantial participation from the women in the economy. She previously told Newsweek, quote unquote, the burden of child caregiving, whether for children or elderly family members, falls disproportionately on women, and policies must enable women to balance work and caring effectively, quote unquote. Thomas Sabotka, the deputy director of Vienna Institute of Demography, told Newsweek, quote unquote, recent research emphasizes that fertility tends to be higher where gender equality is stronger, where institutional support helps reduce the cost and complexity of raising children. He cited France and Sweden as examples. While their fertility rates have still plummeted in the past decade from 1.66 to 1.45 respectively, according to the World Bank data, they are higher than the European Union, which is 1.38. This partly is thanks to general family policies with affordable child care, well-paid parental leaves, and generous financial benefits to families. He said, these together with high levels of gender equality make it easier for the better educated women and couples to achieve a number of children they planned, quote unquote. So, interesting. For this part here, they said they're talking about gender inequality, family policies, financial worries. These are all issues that are affecting reasons why families are deciding, and women and men are deciding, they don't want to have kids. Let's be honest. There's a lot. It takes a lot of planning to make sure you have enough kids. You have enough for everything for the families. Cultural shifts now is another issue, another major, albeit more difficult to measure contributor is a shift in cultural values. A new study conducted by academics affiliated with the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, published last month, found that short-term changes in income or prices cannot explain the widespread decline in fertility, but rather there has been a broadening reordering of adult priorities, with parenthood occupying a diminished role. Authors Melissa Cintini Kearney, an economist from the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, and Philip B. Levine, an economist from Wellesley College in Massachusetts, found there have been changes in how much value people place on different life choices, generally reflecting a larger emphasis on personal fulfillment and career. These include the fact that most women in high-income countries now work, while it was previously reasonable to consider having children as a widespread priority for women, but they do not attribute this to whether women work at all after they are married or have had their first child, but rather this tension between a lifetime career, the way motherhood interrupts or alters lifetime career progression. So, Kearney and Levine also spoke about changes in preferences in general, citing several surveys they reviewed that showed that more people say that having a career they enjoy and close friends is extremely or very important than those who say the same thing about having children. They mentioned changes in parenting expectations, with it becoming less resource and time intensive than ever before, a reduction in marriages, and access to effective contraception abortion policies, fertility, and infertility treatments. These reasons became clear when Newsweek looked at Norway, which is considered a global leader in parental leave and child care policies, with the United Nations International Child Funds, UNICEF, ranking it among the top countries for family-friendly policies. Norway offers parents 12 months of shared paid leave for birth and an additional year for each afterward. It also made kindergarten similar to a U.S. daycare, a statutory right for children aged 1 or older in 2008. Yet, Norway's fertility rate has dropped drastically from 1.9 in 2009 to 1.44 in 2024. According to official figures, the rate for 2003, 1.40, was the lowest recorded fertility rate in the country. Newsweek spoke with several local experts about Norway, and all cited cultural changes, including lower rates of couple formation for those in their 20s, young adults being more likely to live alone, and the demands of modern parenting. So what's the solution? The short answer is that there is no easy fixes. Keowney and Levine said in the report, there is no single policy lever that will reliably boost fertility. Keowney and Levine's main call to action is to widen our lens when discussing fertility. There's so much more we need to know before we can provide something resembling a definite answer. Policies like parental leave, child care subsidies, baby bonuses are much easier to implement and have the potential to affect fertility more rapidly if they were more effective. Levine told Newsweek, changing the social conditions that encourage family formation is more difficult and takes longer to accomplish. So there we have it. We have 4 reasons why the fertility rate is down. It's financial issues, family policies, gender inequality, cultural shifts. And one of the things they mentioned about the cultural shifts is that when women decide, women have to decide on whether, as I said here, that they do not attribute to whether women work at all or after they are married or have had their first child, but rather there's a tension between women choosing to have a career and the way motherhood interrupts or alters their lifetime career progression. So they have to decide on whether they want to have a career or whether they want to be a mother. So they have to choose between motherhood and having a child and raising a child while also working and also having a career and having no children at all. So that's kind of interesting learning about this coming from these researchers here. It's always been known, So this is kind of a pretty deep discussion that we're going into, and this is why I'm doing a live stream today, to kind of go into the details of why we're having a birth rate decline in the United States. But it's not only the United States, it's affecting every single country all over the world, not only in the Western world, but in many parts of the other world. And we're specifically talking about America here, but it's really affecting many countries in the world out there. America's fertility rate crash reaches a new low, and this is from August 5th, 2005. So it says here, I cannot get into the article apparently for some reason. That's unfortunate. It's on theeconomist.com here, but we obviously would have to subscribe in order to watch read more about this, about America's fertility crash reaches a new low from The Economist. But I'm pretty sure I could probably find another article that would probably talk about this more and more. This is probably the same detail, but let's see if we can find it real quick. That's from August 5th. So, according to Google, I'm going to try it. Yeah, we use the AI, of course. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we can find something. No. But according to the AI, since I'm asking the AI here, America's fertility reaches that. So, it's not exactly giving last year's data. So it's new data from the Center for Disease Control released in July 2005 confirmed that the U.S. total fertility rate fell to a record low of 1.55 in 2024. but that's just last year, dipping 1.6 children per woman, dipping below 1.6 children per woman for the first time. This is a continuation of decades-long decline, bringing the U.S. in line with low fertility rates seen in Western Europe. So, I can't really get into the article because I'm not subscribed to The Economist, so that's unfortunate. But if I was, I would read this article for you guys since it was written this month. But that's it. That's okay. There's tons of articles online to read up on this, to read more about the United States fertility low birth rate. But thankfully, there's a more updated article here that's on developmentalaid.org that was written August 20th, 2025. So that was last week. Let's read this here. The United States is grappling with a demographic shift. A drop in birth rates, often called a national baby bust. Rising living costs and the trend of postponing major life milestones have resulted in significant consequences for the nation's economy and population growth. As we read before, it says the U.S. total birth rate fell to 1.626 births per 1,000 women, well below the 2.1 rate needed for the population replacement, with over 3.6 million babies born in 2024. This marks a 25% decline since 2007, when the country reported an all-time high of 4.3 million newborns. Long-term trend: birth rates have generally followed a downward trend since the 2007 to 2009 Great Recession, with brief upturns in 2014 and the post-COVID-19 years of 2021 to 2022. Official statistics show 1950s the birth was at 3.1 births per woman. 1960s the births were at 3.5 births per woman. 1976 it declined to 1.7 births per woman. 2007 recovered to 2.1 births per woman. 2024 birth rates dropped from 2.1 to 1.626. The national average for health science reports an average of 1.3 babies per woman, with many giving birth at the age of 35 or above. From 2005 to 2009, 56.7% of women aged 15 to 49 had at least one child. No significant impact. Does this have an impact on the labor force? So according to this here, it says that a lower birth rate does not automatically reduce the ratio of workers to dependents. This is largely due to two factors: labor force participation among Americans aged 65 to 74. It's increased from 21.4% in 2023 to 26.9% in 2023, and is expected to reach 30.4% by 2033. The female labor force participation has risen significantly from 34% in 1950 to 58% in 2024. So the economic drivers of decline: financial security plays a significant role in decisions by Americans to have or forgo children. And the reason for them foregoing or not having children is the decline of manufacturing and offshoring jobs since the 1970s, the rise of low-paying gig economy jobs, widening of income and wealth inequality over the past few decades, the 2008 financial crash and its crisis impact on the housing market, is persistent inflation and rising healthcare and childcare costs. So we have the other drivers of declines: social and cultural shifts, changing attitudes and shifting gender roles often are also influencing the declining birth rates. The stigma around not having children has decreased, and women are pursuing higher education and careers, which can delay childbearing. This delay often results in fewer children than intended, or sometimes not at all. The U.S. President J.D. Vance has attributed the declining birth rate to cultural shifts, emphasizing the need for a society that values family life and children. J.D. Vance said, quote unquote, We've let down our youth by allowing unrestricted abortion and not having provided the support they need to thrive. Our society has neglected its responsibility to help young people live leading lives. Simply put, we need more babies in America. The government, in response to this, has to introduce measures to adjust the low birth rates by first expanding access to affordable in vitro fertilization, thanks to, as we read, President Trump's executive order, proposing $5,000 baby bonus for children, introducing the Supporting Healthy Moms and Babies Act, which could make child-free for privately insured families, proposing Trump accounts to offer $1,000 tax-deferred investment accounts for babies born during President Donald Trump's second term. However, experts caution the short-term financial incentives will not significantly impact long-term birth trends because the raising a child is an 18-year commitment that cannot be offset by short-term benefits. Next, the last but not least, is the global context. The McKinsey Global Institute warns of a looming population collapse by 2100 due to declining fertility rates. This will lead to slower economic growth and place a heavier burden on younger people to support a growing elderly population. Demographic Jennifer D. Ciuba, the president and CEO of Population Reference Bureau, noted that U.S. rate of 1.6 births per woman is relatively high compared to other developing countries, and added that declining birth rates are a global trend affecting nations regardless of income, geography, or culture. The global birth rate has declined from 3.3 births per woman in 1990 to 2.2 births per woman in 2024, and according to a recent United Nations report, more than two-thirds of people worldwide reside in countries where fertility rates are below the replacement level. So, there we have it, guys. We have it for our live stream for today, kind of going in on the reason why the birth rate has declined not only in the United States, but around the world. And these are some of the reasons why. Financial reasons, economic and financial reasons, social and cultural shifts in people's perceptions of family and having kids, and also a government's responses to this. So it's pretty complex situation on why we have why we have a declining birth rate, not only here in the U.S. but also in other places in the world. So I'm just keeping it a general topic for today. Going in on more specific topics, it's going to take more time, and I didn't want to take this to be a long live stream, and be talking about specific issues. I'm not an expert in that field, so I just wanted to share this intro, just to kind of put this out there, and just talk about this as a current event, and so everybody can learn. You guys can read up on this yourself. Listen to what CBS News is saying. Listen to what these news outlets are saying. Look at the statistics, and to be honest, it is a little concerning for the future. It's because if less people are having kids, more people are having less kids. Of course, that means going to have a more elderly population. And when we look at countries that are struggling with their birth rates, especially in Europe, where they're starting to have a decreased birth rates and more elderly population, and in Asia, like in Japan, Korea, and China, they're starting to have a more older population, but less babies are being born. Of course, that should sound an alarm for many people all over the world. What's going on? Why are these things happening? But these are some of the reasons why these things are happening, contributing to these factors. So there's just more of an abundance of things. So that's just what I have for you guys for today in this live stream. I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream, and I hope it was pretty educational for you and you learned a few things. So hopefully I can do it again, and we'll talk more about this, more about this topic about U.S. fertility, and talk about, well, some of the other aspects maybe of why some of the factors that are affecting the birth rates plummets. Maybe we'll do that in another live stream. So hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. I'm going to end it for today. I'll see you guys in the next one. So don't be afraid to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Enjoy the wonderful weather.